Hey y'all, it's Kate from the Apothecary and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do my February reading wrap up and my March TBR. Sit tight because there's a lot to catch up on and I'm not sure how long this camera battery is going to last. So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. So in February I finished 10 books, 1 essay, 4 short stories, and 2 novellas. The novellas are included in those books, but the others are not included in that 10 books. This includes 4 5 stars, 2 4.5 stars, 3 4 stars, 1 2 star, and 2 DNFs. So a good mixture of all sorts of ratings. Let's just jump right in. I'm going to start in order, go in order of the way that I finished them, just to make it easy on myself. First up, we have our Joan Didion essay of the month, The Women's Movement. And in this essay, Joan Didion used her sarcasm in a perfect way to show just how absurd it was that we even needed a women's movement to get just basic rights for women. She cites I think it was a Time magazine article that said with this women's movement, maybe we'll get less diaper changing and more Dante, and it just felt like it made a farce out of the women's movement where we had women fighting for equal rights just because they are women, and these rights should be equal for all humans, no matter your race, your gender, your sexuality, your ethnicity. You know, these are just human basic rights, and women had to fight for them just because they were women. And that's part of what I love about Joan Didion, is she takes these moments in history and writes about them in ways that you really didn't think about before, but now you cannot stop thinking about them in that way. Next up, we have a short story, The Merchant and the Alchemist Gate by Ted Chiang. This is part of his Exhalation collection. I read this as a short story Sunday selection. I loved this short story. This was a story we had stories within a story, and that's like one of my favorite tropes in writing. I love to get stories within a story or a story within other stories. One quote I got from this short story that I'm going to share with you all: "If our lives are tales that Allah tells, then we are the audience as well as the players, and it is by living these tales that we receive these lessons." And I just love that quote. Next up, we have A Grave for Us All by Michael Roberti. This is book 2 in the Crown and Tide series. I read the arc and I was able to give him, I read it so early that I was able to give him feedback as I was reading it, so that way he could improve it even more. But I loved this book so much. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is the best book in this series so far. I thought it was really great at developing characters and the plot line, and our character relationships were just absolutely fantastic in this book. One quote for you all, and this quote I've heard since I've read this book, finished this book, I've heard in different situations and contexts in almost word per word. The quote says, "History is only made in the retelling. There are 3 stories: ours, theirs, and what really happened." And I feel like that sums up A Grave for Us All so well. After that, I finished Black Veil by Christian Britain. This is book 4 in the Green Rider series. I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars and will probably be the last Green Rider book that I read. I just could not get along with this book. There wasn't enough development for me. It felt like most of what happened in this book didn't push along the story at all. It just kind of happened, and I couldn't get along with some of the decisions that Britain made in writing this book. There were just some scenes and some choices that just rubbed me the wrong way. Next up, we have Blood Rights by Jim Butcher, which did rub me the right way. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. This is Dresden number 6. So much was revealed in this book, in the next Dresden book, but it never felt overwhelming, which sometimes is hard to do when you're trying to give your reader so much, but you don't want them to be overwhelmed. I loved everything about this book. Ruins of Smoke by Joas F. Silva. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. This was a Sphinx finalist for me. I just felt like I didn't know enough information about the characters, the magic, and the story and this world in order to be able to fully appreciate what was happening in this novella. It felt like I needed to read Seeds of War, I think that was book 1's title, before I read this prequel novella in order to fully grasp everything that's happening here. And then we have another short story, Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I absolutely loved reading this classic short story. I wasn't aware until I was looking for another short story to read for Short Story Sunday that this was actually a short story. I thought this whole entire time that this was an entire book, or maybe just a novella. I didn't realize it was a short story. Now, it was a longer short story, so maybe it's novella length, but I loved everything about it. I thought it was rich in characters and atmosphere and the setting and details, and it was just so well done, and I can see why it's such a starting point for a lot of fantasy and science fiction tales today. I have one quote for you all from Strange Case that is, "All human beings as we meet them are commingled out of good and evil, and Edward Hyde, alone in the ranks of mankind, was pure evil." And that just sets the tone so well for Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. After that, I finished The Garden Gnome by Jeff McIntyre. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. This was cozy and wild, endearing and epic, and funny with some crazy dark turns. I thought it was well done. I was not expecting a lot of these turns. One quote for you all: "The sheer ridiculousness of trying to formulate questions to ask a magical gnome should one suddenly appear in your life made it impossible to keep thoughts straight." And I felt like that just kind of summed up everything about The Garden Gnome. It was crazy, it was wild, it was dark, it was funny, it was lighthearted, it was endearing. All of those things all in one. I thought Jeff McIntyre did a really well job done. Next up, we have another Sphinx novella. Actually, 2 are our next books up. A Wolf in Thief's Clothing by Lily Ann Crow. This one I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed these. Had great characters, great pacing, and a really great storyline. After that, I went on to read We're All Monsters Here by Amy Marston. And this one I had to DNF because I just couldn't connect with the characters, with the story, with the world. There was just nothing for me to connect to, so I had to DNF it. After that, we had a short story by Trudy Skies titled Blood. This was from the Anatomy of Fear collection, and this is a vampire mystery short story, and I absolutely loved it. It had great twists at the end, it had great characters, great atmosphere, and it made me very reminiscent of Dracula, especially with, I think it was 2 characters whose last name was Harker, and you just can't help but think of Dracula. We've got Deadbeat by Jim Butcher, which is book 7 in the Dresden file. This one I also gave 5 out of 5 stars, and the Dresden series just gets better and better as the books go on. Next up, we have The Delve by Danny Finn, and this one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. My favorite things about The Delve were the characters and the intrigue. I just kept reading to see what would happen. Our characters were so unpredictable. I never knew what was going to happen next, and I loved it. A quote for you all from The Delve: "What's the point of living without a little spice?" And that kind of gives you just a little hint of the flavor of comedy that Danny Finn has in his writing. Next up, we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. This one I gave 5 out of 5 stars, and honestly, I loved everything about this book. One quote for you all that made me laugh at the very beginning, so it's not a spoiler quote, just gives you a taste of Emily Henry's humor in this book. Says, maybe your fatal flaw is that you don't use turn signals. At the beginning of this book, you get this feeling that it's almost a voiceover of our main character narrating this book, and she's talking about her fatal flaws and the fatal flaws of humans around her. And she says this quote about a fatal flaw, not using turn signals as you're driving, and it just made me laugh so much because drivers down here in North Carolina either don't use their turn signals at all or use them at the most random times, and it drives me crazy driving around, so I could totally relate to this. We're almost through my February reads. I've got our last short story up for February was I Was a Teenage Bigfoot by Jim Butcher. This is, of course, in the Dresden series, and I liked it. I loved it, but I wanted more Bigfoot. Felt like I was misled by the title. I thought that with the title saying I was a teenage Bigfoot, we would get it in the point of view of a Bigfoot, but it was in the point of view of Dresden, which isn't bad. It was just a little misleading. After that, I finished The Gathering Storm by Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan. Another 5 out of 5 star read for me. I loved this book so much. It was written so well. Brandon Sanderson did such a fantastic job with this book. And there were so many moving parts that I felt like he was able to control them and write them in a fantastic way. And the quote I have for you from The Gathering Storm, I felt like summarized the characters and the plot lines and everything happening in this series so well. Quote says, "It is said by blacksmiths that a sword can never be whole again. Once it has been shattered, it must be completely reforged, the metal melted down to slag, then reworked and reformed." And that just summarizes everything so well. Now, the last book that I have on my finished list is actually the second DNF, and that's the Re-Emergence by Alan K. Dell. This is another Sphinx finalist. For this novella, I just couldn't follow it at all. I couldn't follow our characters, who was who and who was on what side and what species they were. I just had such a hard time following this. I gave it to like 55% and I couldn't follow anything at all, so I decided to DNF it. Next up, we have the books that I'm carrying over from February into March. We've, of course, got our Jane Austen collection. This is 5 of Jane Austen novels. I have finished 2 of them. I'm in the middle of the 3rd, Mansfield Park, and I'm really enjoying this Audible collection. A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross, which is book 2, and the Elements of Cadence duology. I am really enjoying this. It's giving me a lot of Game of Thrones feels to it, and I can't wait to see where this goes. Seekers by Troy Knowlton. This is another self-pub fantasy book. It's a YA fantasy, but I'm not feeling the YA so much in it. I'm interested to see where it goes. Children of the Black Moon by Joseph John Lee. This is book 2 in the Spellbinders and Gunslingers series. The Dark Heart of Ilmore by Cara N. Delaney. I'm really enjoying this mystery novella. And The Towers of Midnight by Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan. Now, I have this listed as a carryover. I haven't started it yet. I'm hoping to start it sometime this coming week, but it was supposed to be read in February, or at least started in February, so I'm counting it as a carryover into March. Now, for my March TBR, we have A Memory of Light by Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan, which is the last book in the Wheel of Time series. More realistically, I will probably start that one in April because I haven't even started Towers of Midnight yet. So realistically, Towers of Midnight will probably be a March read and Memory of Light will be an April read. Becky Lynch, The Man Not Your Average Girl by Rebecca Quinn. This is a memoir written by one of my favorite WWE wrestlers, Becky Lynch, and I can't wait to read this. I have it on pre-order. It comes out at the end of March, and I am so excited to read this. This is one of the books I'm most excited to read this month and probably all year round. Butcher and Blackbird. This was my patron pick for March, picked by Leslie at the Nerdy Narrative. This is a serial killer romance that we're going to test out. It's gotten a lot of hype and it's supposed to be really good. We're both going to test it out as a buddy read, and I'm really intrigued to see how this is going to work out. Becoming a Druid by Mike Molman. This is my self-pub pick for March, and I helped edit some of his novellas in this series. I can't wait to see how his writing translates to longer novels. The Legion of the Lost, which is book 3 in the Spellbinders and Gunslingers series by Joseph John Lee. I'm reading book 2 right now, as you know, and I can't wait to see where this goes. I have an idea by the title and what we've gotten so far in book 2, what the focus is going to be in book 3, and I'm really excited for that. How to Solve Your Own Murder. This is a NetGalley arc that I'm going to be reading, hopefully starting this week, maybe this weekend if I can get some good reading in today. I am really excited to read this. It sounds like a kind of a murder mystery with a twist on it because it's going to be your own murder. I'm really excited for that one. And I have just 2 Sphinx finalists left in the whole entire competition. I'm so excited for this. Dragon Meat and Black Cap, and I can't wait to see how both of these novellas go. And to finish off that reading, it's been an interesting competition. I've read some really amazing books. I've had to DNF some books, and I've had some kind of middle of the road books, and I can't wait to see how that finishes up. 2 more reads that I hope to get to today / this weekend are Joan Didion Essay of the Month, of course, Doris Lessing. From what I remember reading this essay the first time, I think this essay made me want to read Doris Lessing's writing, which I haven't gotten to yet, but I do still want to get to. And then I have a Dresden graphic novel, War Cry, that is up next in my Dresden read. I'm hoping to read that today so then I can read the next short story for Short Story Sundays tomorrow. If I don't finish War Cry, then I'll find another non-Dresden short story to read tomorrow, and we'll carry the next Dresden short story on to next week. So that was a huge whirlwind of reading. My February reading wrap-up, my March TBR. Let me know in the comments below what was your favorite reading moment from February, and what are you looking forward to reading the most in March. Keep reading, and I love y'all to the moon and back. Bye.